Hey guys, and welcome back to the Compass Games Learn to Play series. Today we welcome designer Wes Crawford, who is going to give us a detailed introduction, overview, and examples of play for his game, Engine Thieves. So sit back and get ready to learn how to steal a train engine and wreak havoc against the Confederates. Over to you, Wes.
Thank you, Mo. Yes, this is Engine Thieves, sort of a strange name for what is really more commonly known as the Great Locomotive Chase from the American Civil War, 1862, also known as the Andrews Raid, because Union spy, actually he was a double spy, but really working for the Union, James Andrews, came to General Mitchell when he heard that they were going to try to advance, Union forces advance on Chattanooga. And he said, look, what your biggest worry is Confederate forces and supplies and whatnot coming up from Atlanta to reinforce Chattanooga. And I have a plan, and you give me about 20 men, and we'll dress as civilians, sneak down all the way to Marietta, Georgia. We'll get on a train, which I ride all the time, act like we don't know each other, and we'll have pistols in our pockets. And when they get off at 6 a.m. at Big Shanty, now known as Kennesaw, Georgia, everybody will get off the train to eat breakfast, and we will steal the train and burn bridges and tear up track and cut telegraph wires and just sever communications between Atlanta and Chattanooga. And all this will be done next to 3,500 Confederate troops just to the right of the railroad track. And General Mitchell actually thought that sounded like a good plan. So that's what they did. This is part of great raids of the American Civil War, which Compass has said, let's try a few of these games. The other one that they're going to produce is the Confederate raid on St. Albans, Vermont. And you might not have heard of that, but I think this whole idea of small unit raids, covert raids during the American Civil War were both important and way under gamed. So I'm hoping to change that. So as we look at the board here, this is the board. Of course, it was not serpentine like this, the actual railway, but actually started down Marietta, and if you can see my cursor, sort of went up in this direction towards Chattanooga and then over to Bridgeport. So we have to use our imagination a little bit, but on here we have different kinds of stations. This is a station, this is a station, this is a station. These are the spots that you'd be on the railroad track, because I should mention to you at this point, the railroad track is a single track. It's not double tracks like we always see today. If you're going north and somebody's coming south, the only way to get around each other is at a station. So these are dangerous tracks. If you see these red X's, and by the way, each space is 1 mile for those that like to keep track of that sort of thing. And other places we really need to worry about are wood stations, because in this game, it is a train game, and that how you drive this train impacts your wood supply. Basically, go longer at more medium speeds, you're going to have better mileage, and you will be keeping track of this. So you need to know where you can load up with wood, and that would be right here at Cass Station, up here at Tilton, and finally at Boyce. Now, at any station, as you'll see as we talk about it, the game in more detail, you can get emergency wood, which is just 5 pieces of wood, but you'll have to undergo a second challenge, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about when I say that a little later. And you can also cannibalize boxcars, and you might think that's a silly thing to do. Who would think of that up? The readers did that, several boxcars, and you get just a little bit of wood, but you really need to worry about your wood stations. The other thing you really need to worry about as you play this game is the raiders, and we are talking about the solo version of the game, are telegraph stations. And not every station had a telegraph office. But if the telegraph stations ever get word that a train was stolen by Union soldiers, they're going to send a telegraph message all the way north. And so you're going to run into significant opposition in these various stations that have telegraph offices. And they are Kingston, which was a major center, railroad center, and Dalton, Georgia, and finally in Chattanooga. So We do have to worry about cutting the wire for the Raiders. Let's talk exactly about setup now that you have an idea of what's going on here. Oh, we have bridges too. And they're very important because every bridge is worth 6 victory points, except right here where I'm pointing, the Ustinala Bridge is worth 15. That was a large bridge and very important one. So talk about actual setting up. We've talked about the board, trying to get to Bridgeport to meet Union General Mitchell. Let's look at the time track over here. And this was Brittany's wonderful idea. Turned the time track into what really looks like a clock, and we will move that around. It starts at 6 a.m., goes to 4 p.m. By then, word would have really gotten out throughout the North about the raid, and they'd better have met General Mitchell by then. Also had to meet General Mitchell in time that he will go forward with his plan to attack Chattanooga. And why was this a big deal? Because if he had captured Chattanooga in 1862, we're talking April of 1862, pretty much historians agree that the war would have been over 2 years or even sooner. So that was a big deal if it had gone right. It did not. And then over here, what might we need to worry about in a game that bases a lot on covert activity is the alarm track. And we start at 1, and it will move up to 10. Once it gets into the red, the Raiders will have to lose a persuasion cube each time it goes up. Over here, we have the Raider fates, the Raider outcomes. What happens to Raiders? In the boxes up here, those that are captured are placed here, and they each lose a victory point for each one. If anybody has escaped, hey, that's great. They escaped. We don't lose anything. And that means if you had to abandon the train, then we have to go to a certain table to see if they made it back to Union lines. Down here, we have how many are killed, and that's -2 points for each. Must mention for anybody that's captured or killed and they're an engineer, it's lose twice the actual victory points, and the leader, Andrews, lose triple victory points. And if you're hanged, that's mostly flavor because a third of them were hung, and hanged is the same as killed. So there's no difference. You're dead. If we look up here at the top, we have the Confederates, or the CSA action board. And we have what happened. I'm going to scroll very easily back down here. At Big Shanty, when the Raiders stole the train, you can see a little running counter right here. This represents Fuller, Murphy, and Kane. And back up here are Fuller, Murphy, and Kane. And they were the conductor, the supervisor or foreman, and the engineer. They started running after the train. They ran 2 miles to the next station, and then they get a pole car, which is like those pump cars you've seen so much in Old West TV shows, but they didn't have those yet. You actually pushed it off with a pole. And Fuller was the most athletic. He has several special abilities you can see. And Murphy is great at organizing. We can commandeer a train to chase the Raiders much more efficiently if Murphy is around. And Kane, he was along for the ride. He was considered to the Confederates a hero too. And his special ability is you can let him off at a station after Kingston and gain an extra Confederate military unit on the train to chase them. So right here is a stack of cards showing what mode of transportation they are using. And sometimes those modes will allow them to place military units here. And then this happens to be the swim counter right there. There's different modes we can use to put on the board. Swim, there's horses in the 2-player game, and the pole car, etc. And I didn't mention the swim specifically. If a burned bridge is encountered by the Confederates chasing them, what happens? FMC swim. And then we should look down here at the bottom. We have the Raiders dashboard. And we have the general. That's the name of the train that they actually stole. So we start with that card here. This is a card on top there. We put Andrews right here. He's the leader. we put this stack of engineers here. You can see we have Brown and Knight, and these are actual pictures of the actual raiders, not necessarily at the age they were when they committed this raid, because they were all quite young. And we have the rest of the raiders. That's 3 of them there, 2 engineers and the leader. And we have 17 more stacked in here. And we have 3 boxcars. Now, if you cannibalize one, well, it would go to the next spot, 2 or 1. We also have persuasion cubes. What really made the raid as successful as it was, and it did fail because they were all captured when they ran out of wood, right past Ringgold, right about here, but was his persuasive, charismatic ability. And so, as we know from a lot of games, Euro games, things like that, we often model psychological kind of factors, things like that, with cubes. So we have blue cubes, and there are 20. And he will need to use this charisma and this bluffing and these sort of skills to get through stations. So we'll talk about that in a little while too. And then the heart of the game is the actions. And we can place up to 3 cards of actions. Each turn up here on the time track is 15 minutes. So we can do 15 minutes worth of actions in the solo game. The 2-player game gets a little more complex, but it's interesting. But basically all the raider has to do in a solo game is pick out 15 minutes worth of cards. So to actually set up the board now, we have to set the clock at 6, and we have the alarm at 1. We call it the alert level 2. And we put the general counter right here. Now, I want to tell you up front, too, because we didn't emphasize this enough in the rule book, but there's a really cool little blue train, wooden train that you can put on top of this piece or use instead, because we know what train they're on, because on the dashboard it said the general. If the train is changed, because the raiders can steal a different train later on and capture it, we can just change out the card. And likewise, the Confederates, if they ever get on a train, and they usually do, we have a nice little gray wooden train to represent them. And it makes it easier to see on the board. We will put the Pennsylvania here. This is in Marietta. The Pennsylvania was a train that once they reached about 7 a.m., somebody rode a horse after the stealing of the train from Big Shanty to Marietta, and they said, hey, somebody's stolen the train. They thought it was just a few deserters acting up from the camp next door at Big Shanty, and nobody took it super seriously like a Union raid because they couldn't imagine this could have happened. And the Pennsylvania can come into play. You'll see over on the time track. At this time, if you roll a D6 and you get a 1, it comes into play. An hour later, a 1 or 2, and so forth, all the way up to this time here. And if it comes into play, it can chase the raiders too. It might pick up Fuller, Murphy, and Kane, and it's a good engine. In reality, that train did not show up to Big Shanty until noon. So they were really lackadaisical about that and didn't get on the ball. But we're saying there was a possibility it very easily could have. And when that gentleman rode his horse back to Marietta, they also sent a telegraph message north. And by then, the raiders had better cut the telegraph wire, or else lots of bad things happen, including the Chattanooga military train loads up with soldiers and starts heading south. So the CMT, as we call it, train starts in Chattanooga. So we said the Pennsylvania here in Marietta. 2 more special trains. The Yona was a small company train, corporate kind of train that worked at a steel mill and happened to be right there on a siding at Etowah. The raiders passed it by. We might see what happens if we try to destroy it in our playthrough in a little while. And we have one more, the William R. Smith in Kingston was a train that was sitting there. This was a very busy station. At a certain time later in the morning, it would go off to Rome, Georgia. So if it's possible, this train will disappear by the time FMC get there. But if not, they can get on this train. There'll usually be another train in the station too. So Kingston's pretty important. We need to talk about the Confederate units, the CSA units. And these are these gray units you see at most stations. And what we've done, they are, let me see if I can pull this out for you. If you can see this, we have units that are 20 strength, 15 strength, 10 strength, 5 strength, 3 strength, and 2 strength. But there are by far most of the 2, 3, and 5. But there's some 10, 15, and 20, and those are pretty formidable. And we have at Chattanooga, one with a value of 20, turned face down and mixed with 4 other random ones. And then they're randomized in a stack here. So there's 5 units, and you don't know where the 20 is, and there could even be another strong one. Same thing with Big Shanty. We put in one 20 strength unit plus 4 more, mixed them up. So they're right there next to the rail, as we mentioned. In Etowah, we have 2 random strength units. In Dalton, we have 2 random strength units. In Ringgold, near where they were caught, it was a Saturday, and they were doing kind of maneuvers and just training. There's a cavalry unit up there. So there are 3 random strength units right there. Most of the other stations you will see have 1 randomly strength unit placed there, and some don't have any at all. The next important thing to talk about is not only were the Raiders being chased by Fuller, Murphy, and Kane, and possibly the Pennsylvania, but they were also in trouble because this is a single track, as I mentioned. In Chattanooga, when they saw General Mitchell advancing on the city, yet they weren't as strong as the Union thought. In fact, they had a lot of trainees and things like that there. It wasn't real strong at this point. So they actually sent some of the troops and a number of civilians and a lot of supplies that they didn't want captured south to Atlanta. So Union thought they knew the schedule, what trains were coming south, but they didn't. So we have these train schedule stacks, TSS, as we refer to them, and have A, and as you can see, there are 4 random units underneath, pieces, encounters we call them. B, the same thing. C, the same thing. D, E, and F. And with 4 under each, that means 24 counters are underneath, and the A, B, C, D, E, and F are just identifying markers. And among those are 6 trains. So there are 6 trains. They thought there were going to be 3 coming south that they'd have to deal with one way or another, and there's 6. So it's a lot that is not known to the Raiders. So how are we going to model that fog? And what we came up with was to create these train schedule stacks, because there are other kinds of encounters. If there's a dash, that's just a time waster. It wastes 5 minutes. If there's an hourglass, it wastes the whole turn, the whole 15 minutes, or what's left of it. If there's a green circle, it's something that can actually help the Raiders, and you'd roll on a green circle table. And if it's a red flag, that was used for danger, meant danger ahead. So if they ever encounter a red flag, we'll put a red cube, such as this, on the next space on the time track, and the alert level would go up if the Raiders ever tried to leave a station with a red cube. And this was actually used, red flags were, and that's what it meant. So that gives you a little bit of the history of the setup. And we've talked about the units, the Confederate units. And one thing I want to say about them is they don't necessarily represent organized units. They can be anything from several railroad workers with wrenches to a few guards at a station to an actual military unit to all kinds of sorts of things. And as we'll see in combat, they're really hard to kill compared to what the Raiders have. The Raiders only have pistols. Units, of course, could have rifles of various sorts. And so they're really ill-armed for combat. So this is a covert raid. If you're trying to make this fit in with your scheme for war games, think back like Mosby's Raiders or something, or Raid on St. Nazaire or something. You don't want to have combat, but you're probably inevitably going to have to, and then you have to do the best you can while you complete the real mission. We also have these cards down here, the Marietta, Big Shanty, and Moon Station cards, and there aren't many of each. So we shuffle them all together and then deal them into their slot. And I'm going to tell you in just a moment what those are for. Rest of the little counters at the top here are utility counters for burned bridges. These are block counters. If they are discovered by telegraph message, the stations will put up barriers, cut telegraph. I think these pictures are really cool. And torn up track, and bottom side says 8. If a boxcar is detached and left to get in the way of somebody following them, or they throw ties and rails out on the track. So we have lots of little extra things that you see. Wood, you're getting wood if you have combat, and the one on the right is a tactical advantage in combat, which we'll explain later. All right, we do not use event cards in this version, but that pretty much ties up the setup and the explanation and the history. We only have one more thing I think I'll show you right now, and that's the solo sequence of play. And I'm not going to go into detail, but the first thing you do each turn is the Raiders will choose action cards totaling up to 15 minutes or less and place in the action sequence slots on the Raider player dashboard. Then for each action, we do what it says. And after that happens, I'll go into more detail, because if you go into a station, you do have to face a challenge. And if you go into a station with any of these TSSs or any encounters or other trains, you have different challenges and different things to encounter and deal with. But basically, you do that again for all of your cards until you've finished up 15 minutes. And then FMC move northward at the speed of their current pursuit mode. So the slowest is running, that's 1 space in 15 minutes. If they can get on a pole car, which is found in every station, they can go up to 3 spaces every 15 minutes, 2 if there's dangerous track, and they always have to stop in a station because they need a little bit of rest. And of course, the next in the hierarchy would be to actually get a train. And they really tear out of there chasing after the Raiders. So that's not what you want if you're playing the Raiders. So we've talked about action cards, then move FMC northward. And then if the Raiders are in a station with a face-up Confederate unit, that's from the Raiders failing a challenge, you'll turn one more unit face up, and then they all fire at the Raiders. Now, they could have possibly already fired at the Raiders once. So this is a pretty bad step for the Raiders to endure. If the moment you lose a challenge at a station and can't bluff your way through, a unit will start shooting at you. So this is like on top of that. And then we roll 1 black and 1 white die, like up here. For every train that's visible, and that's not those special trains. We're not talking about the special trains, but the ones that start out in these train schedule stacks. If they become visible, the southernmost move first, followed up to the north, and you'll roll 2 dice. If the black is 1, 2, or 3, it won't move unless it's already between stations, and they always move. But if you roll for a train and it's 4, 5, or 6, they will move according to the result on the white die. And there is a table. This is the Confederate train and stack movement. And if you're going southbound, they're just going normal speed. And if they're going northbound, chasing them, they're going faster. Okay? So you'll see what the white die says for you to do there. After we do that for any visible trains, and they always stop at the next station, we do it the same thing in alphabetical order for the train schedule stacks. And so some will move, some won't. But if you're between stations, you'll always move. But you always go in this strict order. And for instance, if there was a train here where I'm showing here at Calhoun, and it moved, say, to that bridge, then this one you wouldn't even roll for, because you never roll to move if there's something between you and the next station. So that pretty much covers what we have going on here once you do that all that movement. for the trains, and you're finished a turn. Then you'll do 15 more minutes, etc. Okay, we'll move on to an example of how this game actually plays. All right, let's get started. Now, before we start the official game, we have a pregame segment, and that's what these Marietta and Big Shanty cards are about. So as a Union player, as a Raider player, you get to choose to pick Marietta cards, and you can stop anytime you want, or you can choose not to pick any of them. But I think it would be really helpful if you get to see some of these. So let's draw the first one and see what we get. There's 3 good ones and 2 bad ones, I think. So that says Fuller questions Andrews on the train. While they're riding on the train, acting like they don't know each other. Here's 20 military-age guys all riding together and not talking to each other, looking sort of rough. We now have a challenge check of 7. So we have to remember that. We don't take care of that because we're still in Marietta. And what we really want is a card that says we meet with Henry Green Cole, who owned the hotel there where they were staying in Marietta and was a Union spy. And he gives them a train schedule. So let's keep going. Second card. Flips, Llewellyn and Smith. Now this is an interesting one. Llewellyn and Smith were forced to enlist in the Confederate forces near Chattanooga, because the story for all these raiders as they made their way down to Marietta was if they ran into any Confederates or anybody that questioned them, they were from Kentucky, and they were so sick and tired of those Yankees up in Kentucky, they decided to make their way to Atlanta and enlist. Well, when they tried that story on these soldiers around Chattanooga, they were forced to enlist right there. So they were not in the raid, but with this card, they are in the raid. So what do? We get to add them, and what we do is they're right here. We'll take him, and we'll just add him over to here, this stack. And we'll take this guy, same thing. And while I'm doing this, the actual history was they did eventually escape from that situation. But what did it say? It said we had to increase the alert level. So that's our punishment for getting 2 more people. All right, pick another card. Show you what all these are. Engineer Hawkins and Porter woke up on time. And the reason they woke up on time is because they actually slept through the raid. They missed the train in Marietta to head north. And we're going to say in this case, what if they did make that? They got up on time. So we lose a persuasion cube. We'll get rid of that. That's hurtful. But we get 2 more people. We'll move him over to here to ride on the train. And look what he says, engineer. And that was very crucial. They had 3 engineers scheduled to go on this train, and only 2 made it. All right, we'll pick another card. This is the one we really want. Henry Green Cole, Union spy and hotel owner. I can designate and turn any 6 train schedule stack counters face up through intelligence. But I almost also have to draw a Big Shanty card at Big Shanty. Okay, I'll take that. And so what I want to do, maybe the ones closest to me. Go up just a little bit. All right, A, we can get rid of A. I'll just put it over here. Let's take one of these over to the side. We'll show you what some of these encounters look like. That's a time waster. Now, the cool thing about using this intelligence is if you run into anything like this one makes you lose your 5 minutes, you can get rid of it. All right? So return it to the encounter stack. So this can save you time because you're finding out something about the schedule. All right, the second one, flip it, and that's a red flag. It will go in the station where we found it, and we'll mask it. We turn it upside down. Next one, flip it. It's another red flag. It's going to mask, and we will put it back in the same station where it was found. And this area of the station is where the challenges and encounters go. We do the same thing, flip it, and it's an hourglass. That's great, because wherever you encounter that, you lose the rest of your turn. And now we don't. All right? So we now have to go back and deal with this first card, because now they're on the way to Marietta to Big Shanty early in the morning, and Fuller, of Fuller, Murphy, and Kane fame, questions, Andrews, on the train, and you're going to see how a challenge works. The consequences are really bad. We'd have to start combat at Big Shanty, where we're greatly outnumbered. Like I said, where there's 24 of us in this game right now, and there's 3,500 Confederates. So what we want to do, we roll twice for a challenge. This is how it works. We'll roll. We got an 11, and that beats the 7, matches or beats. So we beat the challenge. We don't have to worry about it. Now, what would happen? I'll show you what will happen in a minute if we had failed. But anyway, we now have to pick one Big Shanty card. And it says the damper left open and the train comes to a stop. This happened historically. So we now roll 2 dice, and a 2 through 4, the alert level goes up and they start shooting at us. A 5 through 12, the problem is fixed. Proceed to move. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to say we roll something like an 11 and something that beat the 4. So we're going to start moving. And what we're going to do now, we're going to see all of our cards. These are all of our cards, lots and lots of cards to choose from, and you'll get to know them quite well. And I'm going to pick a 5-minute move card for action slot 1. I'm going to pick the challenges and encounters card for action slot 2, which is 5 minutes. So we're on up to 10 minutes. So we could move again. Let's do another 5-minute and put that in action card slot 3. Now you're going to see how this works. All right, I'm going to scroll down and we'll make this bigger. So for 5 minutes of moving, I choose at this moment to go slow. I'll go 1 space, but I expend 1 wood. I can go medium. I can expend 3 wood and go 2 spaces, or I could go fast and I'll expend 6 wood but get to go 4 spaces. Now I want to just get to Moon Station, so I'm going to do that middle one, 2 for 3 wood. So I'm going to move 1, 2 for 3 wood. Discard wood 3 times. I start with 30 wood, and the most you can hold is 45 because they came from Atlanta already. They've used up a third of their wood. All right. So I'm now in the station. The first thing you do, and it does not take any extra time or an action card, is the challenge in the station. The challenge at Moon Station, very small station, is 6. So I get to roll these 2 dice, and looks like I got an 11 again. And it just flipped. So I succeeded. We have a little green cube, which can be brought down. Why? It just means that we satisfied that challenge, and that can move from station to station as we end up stopping in them. So why did we want to stop in Moon Station? It's like not much there, except one thing we could not bring with us, which were tools to tear up the track. So if you look over here, we did our movement card. I'll get rid of that because it was used. We now have the encounters card, and we use this whenever we run into an encounter counter or at Moon Station, so we can draw 1 card. We hope to get tools. What are we going to get? We got no effect. Okay, so what are we going to do? As according to the rules you know so far, we get rid of this card and go to the 3rd card. But we have an option. As a rule, we can always repeat a card if you have the time. So we're going to repeat this card because without tools, we can't tear up any track. And we might need to for victory points and to slow down a train chasing us. All right? So what we do instead is we'll get rid of this card and we'll play the encounters again. But we had to get rid of that because this will be 15 minutes. So let's pick 1 more. Now I know we'll get something because there's only 3 cards here, and 1 is good tools. The other was a crowbar, which is like tools but bad tools. And good tools is best. We can most effectively tear up track. I'll put it right here. So we are done with our turn. So then what did we say? Sequence of play? The Confederates, FMC move, because that's who's really gets agency for the Confederates. They only move 1 space. If you look up here, it says can move 1 space a turn. All right? Now when they get to a station, they can go 3 spaces. So then we have to go through the TSSs. And we look at A. There is no A because we already found out about A, didn't we? In fact, one thing I forgot to do was we were supposed to get rid of 2 from B2 because we could look at 6. So let's do that real quick. And we do this, we flip it, and it's a green circle. We'll put it stays here. That's something that will help us later. And then we'll do this and we'll flip it. And it's a train. This is good that it's a train. And what train is it? It shows us it's Freight Train 1. There were 3 trains we could never find the names of, so we called them Freight Train 1, 2, and 3. So this we'll put right here, and we'll put the B back on this. But now, any visible train is the first one that tries to move. All right, I did it twice by accident, so let's count the one I just did. 1 and 3, it does not move, which means B can try. 1 and 4 does not move, which means C can try to move. Remember, black has to be 4, 5, or 6. Nope, C does not move. D? Nope. E? E moves, and I have the table memorized. It moves 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's up there at Tunnel Hill Station with D, whatever it is. It might be encounters, trains, different things. And then finally, we have F. Does it move? No. Okay, so that's the end of the first turn. All right, so we hit this thing, pivot dial, and we'll put it over to here. And it's more or less aiming at the right time. So now it's 6:15 a.m. and we do the same thing. So have to pick 3 cards. And now I'll show you something else that's important to do. We're going to move 10, and then we're going to cut the telegraph wire. So that'll go to slot 2. So we can do that right now. We'll move 10. Look at our choices now. We can now move medium. We'll go 4 for 4, and 2 for 2 wood, or fast, 8 for 10. Of course, your mileage is not as good going at your fastest speed. And we're going to do 4 for 4. And you might ask me while I'm making this move, why wouldn't you go the fastest speed if you're trying to get all the way to Bridgeport and you want to get ahead of whatever's chasing you? Well, because for every station you go through at a fast speed or go into, the alert level goes up 1 notch. All right? We want to keep that low. Also, this dangerous track, every space that you go over dangerous track at fast speed, you're going to have to roll 3 dice. And if you get 2 6s out of the 3 dice, then you've derailed. And pretty much the game's going to be over, especially this far from Bridgeport, because you will have to abandon the train and roll for each individual raider to see what happens to them. So we finished moving 4. We're going to cut the wire. See, there's a little telegraph wire right here. I'm going to scroll up here and get the cool little telegraph wire cutting marker. Bring it down here right next to it. So now we know it's cut. And at 7 a.m. when somebody tries to send a message, they won't be able to. So we finished up our cards, and now it's time for the FMC to move. They move into the station, and they will switch out. I'm going to keep them up here. It's easier to see them. All these guys up here. There's different modes of movement. And this is a pole car. And so they're in mood station. Now, a pole car can hold 1 Confederate unit if it has a value of 3 or less. So we're going to flip it. It's a 2. So, all right, rolling back up here. We can put them right here. And we also have to move this out. Let's just get some of these cards that we use a lot out here. So we know we're on a pole car now. Can move 3 spaces unless there's dangerous track, in which case it's 2 spaces. So then what do? We cycle back through. We'll try to see if this train goes. It does not. Does letter B go? Freaky rolls. Let's try letter C. Yes. And he goes 6 spaces. Because, again, I have the table memorized. And how about D? E. And here's an example. E is getting ahead of D. 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. And so D can't move because he's in front of it. Remember, nothing goes if there's something between stations, between you and the next station. And we'll roll for F. F does not move either, so that's another turn. All right, now our next biggest thing we got to think of is Etowah. When the actual raiders got to Etowah, they saw this little company engine, this corporate engine, on a siding. And they said, is that going to cause us trouble? Nah, no way. Well, the raiders actually did get on that engine and chased them all the way to Kingston, got on another one and took off. So they were in hot pursuit for a long time when FMC got up here. So we're going to try, just to show you a little combat too, I'm going to try to stop there and cause trouble, get rid of the Yona. And so let's pick out of these cards, let's just do a move 15. And that's all we do because it's 15 minutes. So we do move 15 and our options are to go medium 6 for 5 wood. Let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have to do a challenge. I could just go 5 and use up the same wood, but I'll do that real quick. And we have to use 5 wood. And guess what? I forgot to do the 4 wood last time, so here we go. And let's do a quick challenge. Got a 9, beats a 6, so no problem. They move 3. Fuller, Murphy, and Kane, and they have troops with them. If they have any troops with them, they can always land on me, raiders, and start shooting. And we'll show you combat in a minute, too. If they don't have any troops with them, they're always going to stay, at best, a space behind, unless you're in a station, which they'll then go into the station and yell, raiders, raiders, and the troops at the station would start shooting. All right, so now we have to go back through and try to move these trains. Is this train finally going to leave the station? Yes, he goes 4. And watch how this works. Now, B cannot even roll to see if they move, the rest of them. But C is the minimal move when you roll is 4. So I don't have to roll for C because it's only 3 away. I'll just put it there with B. Same thing with D cannot go because E is in front of it, but E goes and E automatically goes because it's only 3 spaces away. We'll roll for F. Finally, F moves, and F goes 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the next station, and stops. So that's another turn. All right, and we finish that. So now what do we want to do? Like I said, I think our plan this time is to go to Etowah. We have to defeat 2 troops there. They're random. So we're going to hope that they're very weak, and then we will take time to destroy the Yona. So the first thing we're going to do, we have to move 3 spaces. So we're going to look at our options here, and we're actually going to take 10 minutes, go 4 spaces for 4 wood, and we'll have to go fast into the station. That will raise alert level already. So what we're going to do, we'll send this to action slot 1, and then we'll use the combat attack. And it's going to be a little more interesting than even that. That's 15 minutes. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And we have to give up 4 wood. That was 10 minutes. Now I'm going to show you how to do an ambush after I get rid of my wood. See that stack getting smaller? That's always scary. I have to get to the next wood station before I run out. Not too hard to do here. It is hard to get from Cass Station to Tilton, though. I have challenge value of 7 at the station, and I have to bluff my way through. Now, what Andrews told the station people, because they recognized the train when it came in, but they didn't recognize who was on it. He would tell them the boxcars are full of gunpowder, and we're taking it to General Beauregard as a special emergency train. He's low on gunpowder, and we need to get it there. You need to let us through no matter what, whatever you got to do to reschedule trains, whatever. And nobody wanted to get near the train when they heard it was full of gunpowder. And Shiloh had just happened just a few days before. And of course, in the South, the Southern newspapers, they were calling it a huge victory, but they needed to support Beauregard. What we're going to do is something special here. I'm not just going to roll the dice yet. Usually on the second roll, if you fail the first roll, you can add persuasion cubes, and you will add the number of persuasion cubes to the next die roll. So if I use 4 persuasion cubes, I'd add 4 to make it, to make sure you make it on that second roll for the station challenge, because if you don't, they start shooting at you. Well, there's also a rule. If you make it on your first roll, then any combat attack you do can be an ambush, which will give you an extra dice roll for combat. So we want to add persuasion cubes to this first roll. Let's see. Let's add, and this is interesting. Now you find out where people like to wager, like to gamble a little bit. I'm going to put 4 over here. So a 3 and better will be successful at doing this. I got a 6, so I was fine. Put the green up here. We could have done that over here too. So when we do our combat, we can do an extra combat roll. You roll once for every 5 people. If you have 5 or less, you still roll once. But otherwise, you need 5 people. So if I have 16, I still only roll 3 times. I have 24 people. So one more, I could have had 5 rolls. But here's what we're going to look at. Going to see, what do we have here? That's a 3. That's reasonable. All right. What's this one? Another 3. Okay, we can handle that. So we have 5 rolls, and we want to get 6 hits. Now, casualties occur against the Raiders on an individual basis. These guys can be flipped to turn to wounded. They can be killed and taken out of the car entirely and put over in the Fates area. The idea is they have usually better weapons, and people will be constantly running into this battle. So they're hard to kill. The only way I can get rid of this piece is if I get 3 hits on my set of rolls. And to get rid of both, I'm going to need to get 6 hits. So let's look at the combat table. And we already saw that was player aid 1. And what we're going to do is roll the black and yellow. We'll ignore the red, even though they'll roll. And we'll see how many hits we get. And like I said, we have 4 rolls, okay? Let's do this. We'll ignore the red. The red's only when they shoot at us. So we got a 2 and a 5. 2 and a 5, that's 1. Our second roll, a 2 and a 1. A 1's always a miss unless it's double 1s. So third roll, a 5 and a 3. 2, we're up to 3 hits. And our fourth roll, 5 and a 2. 1. So we got 4 hits. That only eliminates one of these. All right. So I'm going to put this back for a second. We did get rid of this. We'll put them over here. And every Confederate unit we destroy is worth 3 victory points. Basically, for a Union victory, we need to get 25. And there's a big draw area because that's fairly realistic. All right. So anyway, we'll go back to player aid 1. Go back to here. The other one, since we only got 1 hit against it, it doesn't take partial hits, but it's an ambush. I get 1 more roll. So we got a 2 and a 5. Did we get 2? Oh, we only got 1 hit. So we got 2 out of 3 hits. That does not destroy it. It gets 1 roll against us, and we'll look at the red die. Oh no, got a 4 and a 5. That's 4 hits, and a 4 is killed if you look down here. So 4 of our guys are killed. And what we will have to do is take 4 of them and put them over here in killed. Stack them up. So that was unfortunate, but that's part of the combat attack card. We had that ambush, and that gave us that extra roll, but we just fell just a little short about wiping them out. So now it's the Confederate turn because we just used up all of our 15 minutes. And the first thing that happens is they move to here. They stop in the next station, and they get to fire at us because it's the Confederate fire phase. So they'll fire 1 more time. And this is absolutely awful. and I'll show you why. In fact, it's so awful for this example, I'm not going to count it. They got double sixes, and they're killed, and that A means Andrews is one of the casualties, and he's killed. So that would really disrupt the game. It doesn't end the game, but let's say it was a 6 and a 5 even. So we really ran into horrible luck here, and 5 more are killed. And so we take 5 more and put them over here. We're way down. And I want to show you, I want to continue this because I want to show you what our decision is. When we get to this next section, are we going to just skedaddle out of there, or are we going to stay and fight? We only need 3 hits, but we don't have too much time, don't have as many people. All right. So we now see about the trains rolling. That will go right here. Now B would roll next. Does it move? No. C, it does. It goes 4. 4. Does D move? No. Does E move? Yes, goes 4. And F. And, all right, we go to the next time. This is 7 a.m. This is when a telegraph message is trying to be sent. I showed you combat, so I think what I'm going to do, rather than play a card, try to do another combat and kill them, and if they survive, they shoot me up even worse, I'm going to not risk it, and I'm just going to start skedaddling and moving along. That does leave this train there for them, but we'll take care of that later. So I'm going to move out of there. I get my cards, going to move 15. All right. So there's no reason in this case that I can't do that. Now, another thing that happened because we had combat is in a station, the alert level goes up by 2. All right, let's move. Let's get out of here. Let's go 6 for 5. 6. I'm feeling lucky. I'll stop at that station, and I'll get rid of 5 wood. So, yeah, is this a train game? No, we're not connecting cities with trains. We're not picking up and delivering, except supposedly gunpowder for Beauregard. We are destroying a lot of things. But, hey, you're driving a train in this one, and you got to worry about your mileage and how you're driving and what you're going to do with different types of track, in addition to burning bridges and all that. So I think it's for train enthusiasts. All right, we moved. We have to do a quick challenge. We beat the number. We now move 3. We move trains. Does this one, freight train, move? No. This one slides in. B couldn't move because C was in front of it. D can try. It goes 6. This one automatically moves, so we'll just look at the white die. It's a 6. That means he goes 8, but that's fast. He will not go fast, so he'd only go 6 because there's dangerous track. There was no reason for him to. They don't know anything's going on. And F. And that doesn't move. So we're on the next turn. And now our total goal is to go fill up with wood and get to Kingston. So not too far from that. How far are we? We're 3 spaces. All right, so we have to choose our actions. We're going to have to move 10 and then get wood at a wood station for 5. So we're going to move 10 minutes, but we'll only go 3 because we're going to stop here. And then we're going to fill up. For every 5 minutes, you can put 15 wood back in. So we can say 15. And so that's what we did for our 15 minutes. And now he goes into a station. He can only go 2 anyway because there's dangerous track there. And then we roll for these trains real quickly. Nope. The letter C. Yes. He goes hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost into Calhoun. Oh, actually, B should have rolled first, but let's see what that goes. Nope. Then E, he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not 8 because there was dangerous track. And D slides in. And F, he goes 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, end of a turn. All right, we're almost there. So I want to show you how to burn a bridge too. So we pick our cards again. This is easy. We're going to do wood station, but we're going to do it twice to fill up with all the wood, all 45 pieces of wood. And then we're going to move 5. Action slot 2. And of course, you make all these decisions any way you want. And to get all of it, okay, so we're full of wood, and we have to get to Tilton to get the next wood. And what did we put on here? We have move for 5 minutes. I want to go fast. We can always leave a station fast. It's okay. So we will go in 5 minutes. We can go 4 miles and 6 wood. Now, how fast did trains go along this route? Southern Railroad tracks were not very good. Most of the engines were made in the north, but they were not in great condition. They were not great quality to begin with. And so the average speed was 15 miles an hour. Speeds in the Great Locomotive Chase actually ended up as high as 60 miles an hour at certain points. So we have moved to there. Now, this looks like it would take 2 turns to get to Etowah. But if you look closely, we can activate this ability that Fuller has that allows pole car one time to go 3 spaces even over. It allows it to basically to go from Allatoona to Etowah in 1 turn. And they went really fast on a pole car when they did that. So they are there and they can take over that train, but I'll show you how that gets done in a minute. Let's move these trains. This can't move. B can't move. C slides in. D can roll. Doesn't move. E slides in. And F doesn't move. Another turn. And now we get some more cards real quick. We want to go on this bridge. We want to try to burn it. Go to Kingston. And then we're going to stop this episode and we'll show you something else. So what we're going to plan is to move for 5 minutes. Action card 1. Let's try to burn the bridge. It's the 2nd slot. And then a move 5, 3rd slot. Okay, so we move 5. We'll go 1 for 1. Now we're going to try to burn the bridge. And it was rainy. And they never successfully really burned a bridge. So what happens is it's going to take a roll of 2d6 for a 10 or above. But the one thing we can do to help ourselves is to use up our wood. If we use up some wood, we might have less wood to get to where we need to go. But if you use 2 pieces of wood, then you can do 9 or above, we'll burn it. And 4 pieces of wood, 8 and above, and we're going to do that. So we're going to get 1 roll, and 8 and above will burn this bridge. So here goes our roll. 5, we did not succeed. So let's try one more time, and we'll get rid of this card. All right. This time we're just feeling lucky. We're going to do it without any wood. We only got a 6. We failed. We could try again next turn, but let's see what's going on at that time. So what happens? It takes them FMC a turn to commandeer the Yonah, get it ready, and head on out. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to go up here, get rid of this pole car, get rid of the horses, which are only used in the 2-player game. And this is the Yonah. So that's the current mode of transportation. And it can take this Confederate unit, which we already know the value of. We'll just keep up. They can ride along with them. They're not very strong, but they would sure help. Okay, so they've done what they can do this turn because it takes that turn to commandeer the train. We roll quickly through the train. We look at B. It can do 5. Letter C. Yes, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So remember 4 counters under that. D, it goes 4. So everything's moving south to get in our way, and it's going to take a lot of time. F doesn't move. All right, it's another turn, so we're about done at this segment. And what we're going to do is pick our cards. We're too worried about the train getting to us, and we want to get past Kingston. So we're going to move 5 minutes. Then there's the William R. Smith. We know we're going to have to do an encounter to get through, and then we're going to try to move past and see if we can get up there and burn a bridge further along. All right. So here's what happens. We move 2 for 3 wood, and we then do our challenge encounters. And I goofed up. I must have, this should be over in the 3rd slot. Okay, encounters. So this train here goes up. It has a 6 challenge value. So trains you run into also have values because the track space is really limited in these stations, and we have to convince this train that it needs to get out of our way because we're so important. First, we have to do this 8 challenge, though, for the station, which doesn't take time. We got a 9. We did it. All right. And then we have to get rid of this train. So we are challenged. That's our encounters card. We got an 8. We did it. So we'll put it back here at the station part to show that there are now no more challenges in that space. And then we can move 5 because that should have been in the 3rd slot. And we're going to tear out of there. We're going to go 2, 3, 4 for 6 wood. And because we need to burn a bridge or something, tear up some track, something for when they start coming out after us. And there's the problem here. If you read the little text here, if you leave Kingston before 3 trains have arrived, and none have arrived yet, the alarm level goes up too because they were trying to hold everybody back. There were lots of extra traffic. So we're already up into the 6. We lose a persuasion cube just because we're up into the red. If you don't have any more persuasion cubes, you have to lose 2 wood instead. And that's only goes up to 10 for a reason. But every time you lose after 10, if you go up a level, you have to lose 2. All right, so that's where we are. And now let's watch what they do. First, we have to, let me see. Hang on a minute. We'll put this up here because they're a train now. And so we have to we can get the little gray counter if we want, but we'll put this here. And now watch this. We're going to look at the train schedule movement. We're going to roll a die. We got a 5. It's faster, so he goes 8. Now, if you look at his card, he can go right through stations. But he does have to stop at Cass Station because he did stop and say, hey, did you see these people come by? What's going on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he didn't quite make it there, but he does have to stop next turn. Then he will go to Kingston. Then, according to the rules of this train, if you look on the card, it goes out of the game. So then it takes another turn to get on the William R. Smith or any other train that came in here, and then it would be chasing again. So the general has a little time to get here and burn the track. That's all we're going to talk about right now. This showed a whole lot of how the game is played. I think you could play pretty well. We're just going to get into some other situations that you haven't seen yet in the next segment. And I didn't ever read the text here at Cass Station. It basically says if you beat the station challenge on the first roll, you'll get to look at 6 more counters and possibly get rid of some of them in the train schedule stacks. But I didn't do that. We moved a little bit forward. We're going to say that the general is now at this bridge 2 spaces south of Adairsville, and some of the trains and things have moved along. And you can see back here, here's where the Yonah is with the Fuller, Murphy, and Kane on it, heading towards Kingston. So this is an example from page 21 and following in 22 and 23 a little bit from the rule book. So I'm going to just go through this because it just lets you explore some things you haven't seen before. All right, so it says the general begins 2 spaces south of Adairsville on a bridge space. The Raiders player chooses the following action cards and places them in their action sequence slots. First, set fire to bridge attempt. Hang on a minute. These are still here from the little minute ago. All right. So, first one we're going to do, set fire to bridge. There's the second one. Then move for 5 minutes. And then the challenges and encounters for the third slot. All right. The player rolls 2d6 for the set fire to bridge attempt and rolls a 7. Remember, we takes a 10 to set fire to a bridge. So it was a failure. The player decides to repeat the card. So we get rid of this, where since we're repeating it, another 2d6 roll. But this time we would discard 2 wood cubes, so we need only a 9 or above. And you see me discarding 2 wood cubes. All right. This time a 10 is rolled, so the attempt is successful, and a burning bridge counter is placed on this bridge space. I'm going to go over here and get 1. So you can see what this looks like. Right here. 6 victory points are gained, and the player knows that only FMC can cross this space only by swimming. So when they get there, the train can't cross this, obviously, and they'll have to swim across. Since it doesn't cover swimming, I'll tell you this, you would replace the counter with a swim counter, and you have to roll all 3d6, and any 6 that's rolled for Fuller, Murphy, Kane, black, yellow, red, that person would drown. Fuller has a special ability to give him a re-roll because he was the most athletic, but basically, one way some of the Confederate followers, the ones, sort of the Terminators, as you will, because they never stop, can be lost. We have to finish this turn with the 5-minute action, so we go into Adairsville. So we moved 2 spaces into Adairsville and used up 3 wood, and we have to stop there because there's something in the challenge box, and it's this C, train schedule stack C, with 4 counters underneath it. This counter C is discarded, and the face-down encounter counters are placed in the challenge box, like right where you see them. The station challenge is free, and we can get rid of this C now because we know we're going to go through it. So what happens with the station challenge? It's an 8, another high number. Player gets 2d6 rolls to meet or surpass the value. The first roll is a 7, so it's not successful. So then the player, as you've seen before, can spin persuasion cubes and takes 3 and removes them from their player dashboard. So a 5 or higher succeeds, and a 6 is rolled. So the challenge is successful. The player temporarily places the green cube, where we have one of these up here, down here, just to show this, so we don't forget that we've passed that station challenge. The Confederate turn begins. First, FMC, roll a 3 on the Confederate train schedule movement table. Looking at the northbound column, they'll move 7 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they have to stop at 5 because they run into Kingston. They automatically try to send a telegraph message in the part where you did not see. The Raiders did cut a telegraph wire right here, and so that is unsuccessful, but they automatically do that in the solo game. If they go into a station that's a telegraph station, they try to send one. So the Yoda is now removed from play since it reached Kingston. So let's see. We just get rid of it. We'll put it here for now, out of the way. During the next turn, FMC can board the William R. Smith, along with 3 Confederate unit counters. Then they can pursue the Raiders on the following turn, but it takes a turn to commandeer. So we'll just put it there. That's what they're doing. They're just trying to load up. And now we have the William R. Smith. Here's the William R. Smith. And so we do the 3 counters that are here, Kingston, and they'll all go up into that little slot on the box there. Let's pretend all 3 of them are up there. All right, just so you see what's going on. Preceding the southernmost train, the Texas, is 5 spaces from Adairsville. And we roll, it goes 6, so it has to stop in 5. So it's now also up in this challenge area on the bottom of all these. All right. And the next southernmost train is Freight 2 in Tilton. The black die shows a 4 and the white shows a 6. That means it goes fast for 8 spaces. But as we've mentioned, it goes down to as if you rolled a 5 if there's dangerous track ahead. So it goes 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it just moves 6 spaces, one before the next one, right? No other trains are seen on the board. So it means now we go to train schedule stacks. No trains may attempt to leave Adairsville because they haven't succeeded through their challenge yet. And after they're challenged successfully, they go in this area. At this point, they could actually try to move south. D is also in Tilton, but it's not rolled because there's a train between it and the next station. E is in Dalton with only 1 counter under the E counter since the others were previously revealed through intelligence. The dice are rolled and the black one shows a 1, so stack E does not move. Stack F is on normal rail 2 spaces north of Johnson, so a roll is not necessary, and stack F is moved into Johnston, as I'm doing here. The Pennsylvania was activated at the end of the preceding turn, so its pursuit card should be handy and in view with 3 face-down Confederate units. And I put them here already to show you, because we're pretending it had been activated. A 6 is rolled with 1d6, and the northbound column of the train stack movement table shows it moves 10 spaces, but it moves on to damaged track right here. Can only go 9. So since there's an 8, the Raiders have good tools. The 8 side is put on, and at 8 has to be rolled, the 8 or higher, to get past this damaged track. And then it's flipped over to the 7 side, so something coming after it, for instance, would still have to deal with it. The Chattanooga military train has not been activated via telegraph message, so it does not move. Then we'd move the clock. Of course, the clock is not here. It's well into the game, but we would advance it. Continuing the next turn, there are 4 face-down encounters, plus a train counter, the Texas, and the challenge box in Adairsville. These all must be resolved before the general may leave. In this situation, the Raiders player only plays 1 card for the challenges and encounters action, 5 minutes for each use. First, the top encounter in the challenge box is flipped face up, and we'll take the top one here, we'll flip it face up. We see that it's this counter. That just wasted 5 minutes. We'll move it off to the side. No effect, but 5 minutes are used up to do that. The second counter is a red flag. That'll be, what if it wasn't? All right, yep, red flag. So we take 1 counter and put it. So probably our time is something like over here. So say it's pointing to that one, then we put the red counter on the next time track. If Raiders try to leave the station this turn or next, the alert level will go up 1. 10 minutes have now elapsed, so we do a third encounter. For the 15, we're using that same card over and over. And it is a green circle. So we go to the green circle table, and that's up here, if you want to see that, right here. A 1 is rolled. And if you can read that, Raiders gain aid from station workers who don't realize the Raiders are Union soldiers. The player may choose to turn over 3 more face-down and counter counters anywhere on the board in a train schedule stack, or gain 2 persuasion cubes back from ones already spent, or gain back 5 minutes worth of actions. A choice is made and the green circle is discarded. The player chooses to gain back the time, so now they can do a 4th encounter. And it is a train. All right. It's the Catoosa. A challenge ensues and the player rolls a 10 with 2d6, which surpasses the challenge value of 6. So the counter is moved into the successful challenges box. All right. On the Confederate turn, FMC load up the William R. Smith pursuit card with 3 face-down CSA units from Kingston. We did that. The William R. Smith is now a northbound train. On the next turn, FMC will begin the chase again. Now that the Catoosa's in the successful challenges box in Adairsville, it's the southernmost southbound train, and the black and white dice are rolled for possible movement. The black die shows a 5 and the white die a 4, so the Catoosa leaves the station and may move 6 spaces. All right, so it got past. They're on opposite sides of each other in the station. 1, 2, up. It ran into the burnt bridge. Oh my gosh. All right. That's actually really good for Fuller, Murphy, and Kane. Then we move, and you've seen how we do all this. We move starting at the D and E and F, and then we roll a black and a white for the Pennsylvania. And what we need is an 8 or higher to get past this torn up track. And what they would do in many cases is take track from behind them and put it ahead of them where it's torn up. And that's how they get by it. So it leaves a problem for somebody else, but they're still in pursuit. So this time a 10's rolled, a 6 and a 4. Since that's higher than the 8 required, the 4 from the white die result shows that the Pennsylvania moves 8 spaces from consulting the northbound column. So that's what we do. We go 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, at this point, it really doesn't matter. You could stop playing the Pennsylvania because it will run into a burned bridge. If there's a burned bridge between it and the general, then it's effectively out of the game. But this just shows how it works. All right, that's where we're going to stop this, but let's just point out. So what happens with next turn when Fuller, Murphy, and Kane roll and they move up here and they get to the burned bridge? Well, then they'll spend another turn bringing that swim counter down and swimming, rolling to see if anybody drowns. In that case, nobody did when I just rolled. And then the next turn, they can get on this train and start chasing them again. So it's a pretty scary situation for the Raiders still. And they still have to do the Texas. The Texas is here, and they have to beat that challenge before they can leave the station. Plus, another train's coming down. They're going to run into all kinds of things, as you see, any encounters. And the only thing this didn't show was a train and a train meeting each other in the middle. And what would happen, first off, they can collide. Now, they blew their whistles like crazy during this time, so it's less likely. But if one train is moving slow, then they will not collide no matter what the other train is moving. But if they're both moving medium, or one's medium and one's fast, you will have to roll dice to see if they collide, and it's pretty dangerous. I think, let's see if I'm right, it's, train collision. One train going medium, the other going fast, roll 3d6 twice, and you keep out any 6s you roll, but if you end up at the end of those rolls with 2 6s, boxcars, there's a collision, and lots of your people will die, even though it gains you a few victory points for carrying up the track. But otherwise, if you meet and you're in the same position, and this is not in the example in the rule book, I'm just telling you, you have 2 choices here on there. You can convince them by beating the challenge of 6 in this case, that you are very much more important than they are, and they will back up with you to the next station and then automatically be out of the way. So you can do it through a challenge, or you can capture the train, leave the general behind, and then put all your people on here. What's an advantage of that is you automatically gain 30 wood. You start with 30 wood if you do that. What's the disadvantage is that 2 of them, you're leaving the general behind, so Fuller, Murphy, and Kane can get on that train and chase you. And the other disadvantage is that they get 1 free combat roll against you just for trying to take over the train. So if you run into train schedule stack, you will turn them over 1 by 1. Anything that's not a train will go into the previous station, up here into the challenge area, and you'll have to deal with them later. But anything that the train stays there, and you have to do, like I said, either challenge it to back up or take it over. If there's more than 1 train, it goes back to the last station because only 1 train would go south. This is your fog. You don't know what's ahead of you, and we're trying to deal with that. So that explains another very, very important part of the game. Okay, we'll move to the end now. Okay, now let's look at the example in the end where the general is very close to Chattanooga, just past the wood station, so lots of wood to get to the end. And we have several choices. We could move right on into Chattanooga and try to get past the challenges there and bluff our way through. But there's one cool card that I want to show you that can only be used once per game, is the rest and plot card. I guess it can only be used once per game. And right here, let's play this. It's 15 minutes, so it takes up our 15 minutes. And at this point, we're just pretending that we left Fuller Murphy Kane way in the dust. We've been burning bridges, tearing up track, cutting telegraph wire, all kinds of fun things. And we want to be at our very best. We're not worried about him catching up because we have several burned bridges and he's trying to run after swimming. So let's look at this. We can not be used in a station. We're not in a station. We can gain 4 persuasion cubes, even if Andrews is captured, wounded, or killed. Or we can lower the alert level by 2 levels, and then it's discarded. So since we have a little time, we probably at this point may have very few persuasion cubes left. So we might want to do that. So that would take up a whole turn if we use that card. And then let's set it up so that we can go into the station. We're 4 spaces out. So let's move 10, and then we do encounters. Like I say, we're not worrying about anything else behind us at this point. So we'll move 4. We'll get rid of 4 wood cubes. And this is the danger of Chattanooga. You can be like thinking you're in a great position, and all of a sudden here's a challenge of 8 in the station. So see what happened. We'd roll it. We got a 7. Say we ended up somehow with 6 persuasion cubes. Well, the train has a challenge of 8 too. So let's use 3 of them. And we roll. We got a 6 plus 3 is 9. We beat the 8. And that's the automatic challenge. And now we have the card that allows us to deal with an encounter. And we just have 1, that train. And it has a challenge value of 8. So we have to deal with that again. We roll and living dangerously and not reading it at this point. That's a 5, but we're going to use the last of our persuasion cubes here. And so we'll add 4 to whatever we roll. And we rolled 6 plus 4 is 10. It beats the 8. So we're through. So then we just have to get to Bridgeport and the game ends. It's very tempting to go fast at the end, especially if somebody is chasing you. And so watch out for the dangerous track there. It does happen sometimes. You will lose at the end because you derailed right before you got to the Union troops. So then let's look at the scoring. This is how we get victory points. And it'd be good to understand this going into the game, probably at the beginning even. You gain 6 points for each bridge set on fire. The Oostanala Bridge is 15 points. You get 3 points for every CSA unit eliminated, regardless of its strength, because that wasn't the mission, was to destroy units. It was to destroy bridges and track and telegraph capability. You get 1 point for each damaged track marked south of Chattanooga. It's still on the board. You get 2 points for each telegraph line cut. And by the way, every time you cut a telegraph line, the alert level goes up 1. And I might not have done that in my example. You gain 15 points for arriving with the Raider train in Bridgeport, 1 point for each turn before 4 p.m. arriving in Bridgeport with a stolen train, 8 points for a train collision, but this is not a good idea. Some people like to kamikaze with the trains, and you'll lose so many people from that it'll be a negative net. You get 4 points for a train derailment, still messes up the track a bit, part of your mission, but same thing. You're probably going to get more people killed. 3 points for each train falling from a burning bridge. I just played this Saturday at the Trains with Games event, and a woman succeeded in that twice. That is, she waited for a train to come meet her on the bridge and took over that train and then left the preceding train, the first time being the general, on the bridge, and before actually leaving the space, setting fire to the bridge, and it drops the train down, so you get 3 more points. The visual is worth it, believe me. Then you lose a point for each captured raider. but that's 2 for engineers or 3 for Andrews, minus 2 points for each killed or hanged raider, times 2 for engineers and times 3 for Andrews, minus a point for, now these are for 2-player things, but I'll tell you about it now. For every 3 medals of honor, you gain a point for the 2-player game. For minus a point for every 3 event cards that the Confederate player still holds in their hand. But that's not a lot, and it's a 2-player game only. So in solo levels of victory, you need 25 to 50 for a Union victory. 51 or above is a strategic Union victory. It changes the course of the war because of capturing Chattanooga. And otherwise, there's a big draw category because it's really hard to say. If you're really frustrated by that sort of play and want to be a winner or loser, 25 is the number. And you can really have a Union failure or a massive Union failure. And all those results have happened in playtesting. That's the game. That's the solo game. Thank you very much. All right. And we're going to talk about the 2-player version. And this is assuming you've already seen all of the solo version section. This should be really easy to tack some more detail and rules to and let 2 players play against each other. One is still the Raiders. The other is the Confederates. And basically, the Confederates have agency over Fuller, Murphy, and Kane, and we refer to them as FMC. And they're the ones starting up to chase them, even running at the very beginning. But we have several different new things going on. We now have cards for the Confederate player. Those are action cards. They work very similarly, and I'm going to show you what some of those look like. And as you'll see, they also have a number of minutes for each card and different kinds of activities they can do. Most of them are moving, and they refer to Fuller, Murphy, and Kane and the mode that they are moving with. And you'll notice some blank spots because I've already set up a set of moves to show you an example in a little while. So likewise, we still have the Raider cards here, and some of those are already taken out. And what else is going to be new? I'm going to tell you about the card play in a moment. We have event cards. And every time Fuller, Murphy, and Kane go into any station, they're going to draw an event card. And to set up the event cards for the beginning of the game, you're going to see a number of event cards. There's 18 that are very helpful for Fuller, Murphy, and Kane. And a lot of these are really I got you kind of cards when you pull them out and play them on the Raiders. And then there's 8 that are actually helpful for the Raiders. And what you do, you're going to shuffle those 8 and then blindly pull 4 of them out and blindly put the other 4 back in the box. And you're going to shuffle those 4 event cards that are good for the Raiders in with the 18 that are good for Fuller, Murphy, Kane. So 4 of these cards are going to say immediately play in red. And those are the ones that are good for the Raiders. And you have to hand that card as a CSA player. You hand that card to the Raiders, and then they can play it when it says it can be played. So there is some chance of the Raiders getting advantage out of this too, but most are good for the Confederate player. Let me say now that every time that the Fuller, Murphy, and Kane go into a station and stop at the end of their turn, they get to draw one of these cards. So even though you're going to see that they are programmed during the first part, they can only run, they can only get on a pole car and stuff. Each of these stations is going to give them that advantage of having one of these cards. If you look at how many stations they can potentially reach, they can get a lot of cards that are fun to play. And then we move on. We have the TSSs, or the train schedule stacks, with the encounters. And you might remember they're labeled A, B, C, D, E, and F. And what we have now, we have 4 counters under each. And the Confederate player has 2 choices. They can either do them randomly, just like in the solo game, and mix them up and put 4 of the counters under each of those. And then after they're set, they can look at them so they know what is under each and where a train is and different kinds of other encounters are. Or they can actually choose to create these encounters under each train schedule stack. And to do so, there's one basic rule, is you have to have 1 train within each stack. And there are 6 trains, so that's 1 per stack. And then you can sort of set up a cunning defense if you think if they're going to run into these train schedule stacks in a station or somewhere, if the Raiders are, then there you can set it up so maybe it'll be to your advantage. But do remember that they're probably going to get some intelligence back at Marietta, and then they'll take away 6 of these and any 6 that they want without looking. And at Cass Station down here, if they succeed in meeting the station challenge on the first roll, they're going to get to look at 6 more. So sometimes your best laid plans could get foiled a little bit with that strategy, but it's still, you have the most control in this way, and there's definitely 1 train in each stack. So that's another part about setting up the game. Those are the salient points about setting up, but let's talk a little bit more about card play. So in the solo game, the Raiders, this would be a legal move for the Raiders. They could put a 5-minute card in each. That's 15 minutes. But now we have a similar situation right here. The Confederates have a 5-minute card in each. For an example, I'm going to show you. But what if instead they wanted to run for 15, the Confederates? Well, we have new rule, and this is very important to note, that a 15-minute card can only go in the 3rd position. This is for both players. And a 10-minute card can only go in the 2nd or 3rd position. So that means in our card decks, let you look at this real quick, we now have 2 dummy cards worth 0. So you'd play them for 0 minutes. You might put both of these down and then have a 15 in the 3rd spot. We also have a new card that is send an unmanned train southbound. Now, what is that about? The instructions are on the card, but basically, if the Raiders do run into a train somewhere between stations and they decide to attack and capture it, they do so with the penalty of getting a combat attack against them. But then what they can do is send that train that they left behind down the track towards the Confederates. Fuller Murphy Kane chasing them. And you can read the rules about how that would work there. But basically, it'll move each turn and then it's going to stop in a station. But the Confederates chasing them would have to be very careful not to have a collision or something. Let's see the other set of cards. Look at these more closely. And so here, this is the Confederate cards, and we have 2 dummy cards here too. We had to add to the deck. So again, if they wanted to go 15 minutes on any kind of mode, we have 0, 0, then 15. If they wanted to go 10 in a pole car and 5 more minutes doing something else, load up CSA units in a station, they would have to do dummy for 0, then the 10 going on a pole car because it has to be in the 2nd slot, and then they could finish out their 15 minutes right here with the load up CSA units in the station card. So you'll always play 3 cards in this case too. You always play 3. And that pretty much explains that, except that just look real carefully at these Confederate FMC cards, because you're going to get some options like with the pole car to go 5, 10, or 15 minutes, and you'll see how that works. If you go into a station and you want to warn or alert the Confederate units there, that's why I have this card over here. That takes 5 minutes. It doesn't happen automatically anymore. If you want to send a telegraph message, same thing. It takes 5 minutes. It doesn't happen automatically anymore. So that's just a little about the cards. The card play can be a lot of fun. So how do we know which card goes first? Well, the card with the smaller number goes first, the number of minutes. Here we have an example, and I'll show this example in more detail in a moment, but both of these were 5 minutes. So there is a color priority as to which goes first, but look at this closely. You see that little tiny A right there when I bring it back? That means it goes before a card with a letter higher in the alphabet. So this blue A would go before this orange A because that's a B. Now, what if you each have the same color card, the same length of time on it? Then we look to this alert level. If the alert level is in the green, then the Raiders would go first and play their card first. If it's in the red, then the FMC and the Confederates would go first. So that's a very important distinction, as you'll see in our example in just a minute. What else do we have going on before we get into this example? We have medals of honor. And medals of honor, when acquired, will be placed right here in this area. And there were 19 raiders that were awarded the very first ever medals of honor. It was something that Congress came up with. Believe it or not, a lot of generals were against having a Medal of Honor. They felt it was very European. They felt that somebody should fight heroically just because it's their country and all that. But in Congress went out, they thought they needed, some kind of incentive to make forces work better, or get individuals to fight better, more heroically. And so they came up with this Medal of Honor. And these raiders were the first ones to get this Medal of Honor. And another interesting fact about that is that last June, 2 more were awarded. Now, civilians, including Andrews, the leader, could not get it. They were civilians. And there were 2 civilians. But there was one guy that never got it. Just nobody really politicked for him to get one. And he was hung, so he didn't have somebody, he couldn't do it himself. And one of the raiders that was actually sort of forced to enlist in the Confederate forces up near Chattanooga, his family, and after all these years, were still politicking to get him one. So he got one. He was awarded one too. So there were actually 21 that were awarded. We only have 19 in the game. So we needed to change the rules just a tiny bit. You can reuse 2 of them if you want to go by that. But we have 19 medals of honor. Let's talk about what you get with these medals of honor, all right, and how do they play in the game. Whenever a CSA unit is eliminated, the Raiders players awarded 3 Medal of Honor tokens, and you'll put them over here on the dashboard. And whenever a telegraph is cut or a damaged track marker is placed, the Raiders player is awarded 1. When bridge is burned, the Raiders player is awarded 2 Medal of Honor tokens. So you'll accumulate these as you do damage. And then what you can do is you do get in a battle, you can spin them and you turn them over on the spin side. And if you say, let's take an example here, combat table. Say you rolled a bad result, a 3 and a 3. That would be 3 hits and a tactical advantage. And if you're shooting at an engineer or an engineer is in the area, one of those would be one of the casualties. Well, what you can do is you can spend exactly 1 Medal of Honor, and it can't be reused after you spend it, but you can change the pips on one of the dice by 1. So obviously you would want to do something like turn the black dice from a 3 to a 2, and it's only 1 hit, and none of the other bad things. So this really helps mitigate the catastrophe that can happen to you on the combat table as the Raiders. If you attack, you can do also the same thing. Say you attack the Confederates and you got a 1 on the black and a 2 on the yellow. Well, you can use 1 to change it, and it can make it a 2-2, which is a pretty nice result. So you can use your medals both ways, but you will spin them a lot in a battle. If you don't watch it, you don't want to run out and have none in reserve. So that's how we've sort of abstracted this whole thing about the medals of honor and how it's turned into a game mechanic. And, and rightly so. They did something pretty courageous and deserved it. So we've talked about the cards and what order they get played. Let's now talk about the card play through an example in the book. And this is in the rule book. It's called example number 2 at the bottom of page 25. And I'm going to read it, and we'll sort of act this out, all right? Let's grab a train real quick, and let's take this train here and say it was right here. And so the Confederates are here, Fuller Murphy Kane, and the W.R. Smith, and the Raiders are right here on the General in the Dalton Station. And that's how we're setting this up. And we say after choosing their action sequence, that means choosing their 3 cards secretly. Of course, these are turned face down, and you turn them up 1 card at a time. Both players turn over their first action card. And for the Raiders, it's a yellow challenge and encounters card right here. That's sort of orangish yellow, whatever you want to call it. and a blue train movement card for the Confederates. Both actions take 5 minutes, but blue cards are higher priority than yellow, because we saw from that little letter right here, there's an A there and there was a B on the other. So FMC move first, and in this hypothetical case, move into Dalton Station with the Raiders. So they roll, and here they are right here. Now in the solo game, they would have automatically alerted any soldiers there, and they'd start shooting and all this sort of stuff, right? So this is what happens. First, the Confederate player does draw an event card because they simply had entered in a station. Maybe that would help them right then, but it might be something they'll want to use later on. And the Raiders player, because they have this encounters card, flips over the last hypothetical encounter counter in the challenges box, and it happens to be a red flag. And I didn't put these counters on here, but this is the net effect of that. We take a red cube and we put it in the next time slot from where the clock is. And so if the Raiders leave during this turn or the next, if they leave the station with a red flag on it, remember what happens. The alert level is going to go up one. All right. Both players flip their second action cards face up, and they reveal a blue 5 for the Raiders player right here, and a red FMC alert CS units 5-minute card for the Confederates. So which goes first? We remember blue is A. Well, this card's a C. So this time the Raiders end up going first. Blue takes priority over red, so the Raiders move out of the station 2 spaces for a cost of 3 wood cubes. So we'll move them up here, and we would get rid of 3 wood cubes, as you might remember. Then the CSA units in the station, they get to do their card. And what does it say that they do? They alert the Confederates in the station, right? And so they'd flip them up and they could all fire. There's nobody to fire at. They just got out of the station in the nick of time. Finally, the third action cards are turned face up. The Raider player shows their sort of pinkish cut the telegraph wire 5 card. The Confederate card is also same color, send a telegraph message card. But what happened? That red flag changed everything, because when they left the station, this put it up into the red on the alert level. We're up to 6. So first off, you get rid of a persuasion cube, because that happens when you hit the red. But since the times and colors of the cards match, the alert level is consulted to determine which card is enacted first. If the alert level had remained at 5, the Raiders would have first cut the telegraph. But since the alert level rose to 6, the Confederate player plays their card first, and a telegraph message is sent to Chattanooga, warning of the Raiders. The Raiders then cut the telegraph line and gain 2 victory points, but this is probably too late to save them from probable capture or destruction. Because remember, when an alert happens above in Chattanooga, this Chattanooga train will come here. It'll be activated. The next turn, it will start moving south. It'll have 3 of the 5 combat units there on board. And basically, you can read the rules specifically, but when you come within 2 stations of the Raiders, they will set up a block right here, which the Raiders would have to, wherever it is, that they end up at that point, and the Raiders would have to actually destroy all those combat units and roll a 10 or above just to get past this block counter before they could even progress. So chances are they'll be in a pretty bad battle. And even then, when they reach Chattanooga, there will also be a block there and the remaining combat units. So that would be very dire for them. And guess what? This is what happened. And it pretty much went down exactly as this example showed in history, that the Raiders got out just in the nick of time, and they tried to send a telegraph message behind them. Fuller Murphy Kane did. In fact, they actually drove through the station going slowly. And if you read the text, it says this is possible. And they let off a 17-year-old telegraph operator who ran in and sent the message at the exact same time they were cutting the wire, but he was just a few seconds ahead of them and sent enough of the message that the officers up in Chattanooga could understand what was going on before they cut it. And to follow out history, They were then still chased by the train. They went by Ringgold, where a lot of cavalry were on weekend maneuvers. They got to about right here, about 2 miles past Ringgold in this little rougher area, more dangerous track area, and ran out of wood. Because when they were back here in Tilton, historically speaking again, they were being chased so closely by the Confederates on the Texas going backwards that they could not load up with all their wood. And this is as far as they got. And they had to abandon train, go to the abandoned train table, and roll for each individual to see how many could make it out, or if they were captured, or if they were killed, or if they were hanged, which is the same result. So that pretty much tells you the two-player version. You do want to look at the victory conditions. And now I want you to look at the victory points. They're earned the same, except for one thing I'll tell you about, and the two-player levels of victory. Okay, that's a little different than the solo level. So with the solo level, for an actual Union victory, you had to get 25 points. For here, you only need 16. And the only thing different with earning points is every 3 Medal of Honors the Raiders have that they have not spent gains them 1 victory point. And conversely, with the Fuller Murphy Kane and the Confederates, for every 3 of the event cards, which they never used, have not spent, so to speak, then they also get 1 victory point. So sometimes that can just be enough to make a difference. But the two-player version can be pretty exciting, and I hope you try that. But we definitely recommend you try the solo version first, just to get all these basic mechanics down. I'd really like to thank Compass Games. I'd like to thank Bill for believing in this project, and Brittany for all of her creativity, and Julian for taking care of so many files and getting everything all right for the printers. And I'd like to thank Mo profusely for putting up with me trying to learn this Vassal thing, which is quite new to me, and for the editing he's undoubtedly had to do and is about to do. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'll look for you on Board Game Geek. Bye-bye.